Jesus got angry, but it was a positive force.
The Bible tells us in numerous places to be slow to anger, and our flesh loves quick decisions.
You cannot control what happens to you all the time, but you can control how you respond.
And I'm sitting in my prison cell because I put myself there, and the key is sitting right there in the lock. Hello, and welcome back. I don't know if you missed us, but we missed you. You're tuned in to Faith and Culture, and I think we got a really good program today. But first of all, let's do a little introductions. My name is Keith.
Pastor Drew.
My name's Pastor Jack, the youth pastor here at Center Bethel.
That's right, he took my job.
That's all right. We found you another one.
That's all right.
Hey, by the way, the bathrooms are dirty.
Whoa. That angers me. That angers me. No.
Well, anger is a good subject because we're going to talk about anger today. And so, Drew, besides cleaning bathrooms, what makes you angry?
Well, there's a couple things that make me angry. I'll stick really short to this. One of the things that makes me angry is cold coffee. It was meant to be hot.
I agree.
And people like cold coffee, which is okay. That's fine with them. I'm already making our viewers really angry with me. So that's one of them.
All right. Cold coffee.
I'm a golfer. I know, Pastor Keith, you're a golfer. And whenever there's a group in front of me at the golf course and they're playing slow and holding up play and they won't wave me through and I have to sit there and wait, that makes me angry.
Good.
Mine is very similar to that. It's called slow traffic. And I don't know what it is. There could be a legitimate reason why they want to drive 10 miles below the speed limit. I don't know, but I don't like it. And the longer I stay back there, the more I begin to fume. And changes my disposition quickly.
We had one of the college guys that I went to college with. He would keep golf balls in his center console. Ooh. And if somebody would cut him off, he would speed around. And when he would speed around, he'd dig in there for some of those golf balls. And I know he heard this from somewhere, I don't remember, but he would take those golf balls, he had a sunroof, he'd roll it back. And we were with one of our RAs, and as we're driving back, he's getting ready to do this. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "They just cut me off. I'm angry." And it's just like, okay, well, let's settle down. And he would take golf balls and he'd throw them out his sunroof.
Wow.
And for the people behind him. So they would, anyways.
Don't give his name.
We stopped it. No, I won't give his name.
Because incriminate him.
That'd be really bad. But we had to shut that down. So, but that you saying that reminds me of
Did you take away all the golf balls?
Story.
Is that how you shut him down?
Yeah. Then we, I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah.
I played golf with him and no more.
And he probably replaced them with rocks, but they're cheaper anyway. Okay, so we're on the subject of anger, and I want to kick it off with a question, and here it is. Is anger a sin? Is it wrong to get mad? What's your thoughts?
Anger is not a sin unless you let it to be. It's what's that word? Neutral. That's not the right word, but it's okay. It's neutral, and it's how you apply it to you. And God created us with emotions, and I think that's something to be considered. Well, why is anger one of those emotions that He created us with? And so, how neutral does that come into that play? So, anger itself is not a sin that I understood through scripturally.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Well said, Pastor Drew. I mean, there's a couple verses in the Bible. Psalms 4:4 is one of them, and then Ephesians 4:26 it says, "Be angry, but do not sin." Maybe referencing a righteous sin, a righteous indignation, where there would be a foundation.
Did you say righteous sin, or did you mean righteous anger?
Righteous anger. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for the clarification on that. My first episode and my last episode on Faith and Culture. Yes, thank you. A righteous anger. It's okay to be angry whenever the foundation of that is one of righteousness or one with good cause. And there's a lot that can stem from anger. So it's how do you handle it and how do you go about being angry when you are angry?
Okay. The verse that you gave, if you look at it in the New Living Translation, it says, don't sin by letting your anger control you.
Mm.
All right. So that be angry, but don't sin. The sin pretty much comes in when the anger is controlling, so that some kind of words or some kind of actions or something happens that, if we're honest, we would say, well, I was a little bit out of control. I said things I shouldn't have said. I acted in a way that I shouldn't have acted. Well, that's anger, and it's become sin because you were not controlling the emotion and keeping it in the right place.
So you're a believer you can control your emotions?
Well, I don't know if I can control all my emotions, but according to the scriptures, I may not can control anger, but I must control my responses when I'm angry.
So you can still be angry and have that intense, like, I want to Hulk out, I want to throw something, but still control that, and you're dignified in being okay?
Well, we'll explore it a little bit more, because just because it doesn't come out doesn't mean it doesn't get in here.
When you're pointing to where?
The heart.
Okay.
And you start controlling how you behave in ways that show up maybe later on. But before we get to that, let's talk about this. So if anger is not sin until it's controlling us, or we're doing something that you'd say, well, you shouldn't act like that, or you shouldn't respond that way, then let's talk about Jesus in the temple, okay? I'm thinking flipping tables, running people out, not even letting them pick up their stuff and get out. He's just running them out. Does that look like his actions were in control? So what's your thoughts on that?
I think it goes back to the heart and the aspect of Jesus came to reveal that the laws apply to the heart. And I know a verse that you said you perhaps might share in this episode is an extension from Matthew 5:21, but making reference in regards to anger and then lust, of how I cannot murder all day long. That's really easy for me, but it's about the heart. And so I can have all the nastiest, maybe intentions of the heart or thoughts in the head, and I can never do that action all day, but it's about the heart. So in the instance of, I don't think that you can just solely judge where somebody is at with anger, where somebody is at with lust or murder, based on whether or not they are carrying out an outward expression or not. And so same with the Jesus example. He carried out an outward expression of anger, but what was the attitude of his heart in that moment? We
had a lady showed up in our connection group the other day. And so I just went around the room and I was just like, so how are you doing? How are you doing? And I got over to her and she looks at me just as stone faced as can be. And she goes, I didn't kill anybody in my heart today. It's been a good day. I was like, well, good deal. Mm-hmm. But I mean, yeah, it's really about the heart. But okay, so what was in the heart of Jesus when he's flipping tables and I mean he's very passionate at that particular moment about I'm running you out. So what's your thoughts on that?
For me, I look at it and you instantly want to say angrily, or however you want to say that, he went over and he just started tossing tables and using a whip. And I don't know if that was the response. And I know it says that it's done with a righteousness into that, but I think that was so controlled, as what Jack was saying. It was a thought process to where he was angry, but yet the emotion, as well as all emotions, I think, let's get down to it. Not just anger, but do all emotions bring out what's actually in the heart? And I think what Jesus was seeing in that temple was an injustice being done in God's kingdom, to where they're selling pigeons, they're selling these sacrifices that should be honestly dirt cheap, because they're travelers coming from out of town, and these sacrifices should be dirt cheap. They can't carry their own sacrifices with them on this journey. And so they're marking them up. And so he sees an injustice being done, that it's a salvation to the heart. And with Jesus seeing this, I think that's where, man, that gets me boiling. And it was a controlled anger to where he uses this to signify what's actually going on in his heart, was what I was hearing Jack even say.
Well, you stop and think when you look at it, it's given to us in several different places. Okay, Matthew has it, and Mark has it, and then John has it. Now, John has it early on, and he gives something that's really interesting, and that's the only one where it talks about him weaving a whip together. All right, and so that does give us a new insight as to, the control. The anger was not out of control.
It's a process.
Because he's processing. It's like he's over here looking at everything, and he's taking time to weave this all together. And he's looking, and he's thinking. He's like, you know what? This is an injustice. This is wrong. He even says, you turn my father's house into a marketplace, and so as he's weaving that together, he's like processing, you know what? Today, I'm going to clean house for my father. And he was absolutely in control, even though it looked like he was not in control.
So how does this play out in real life for us? That's a real question. Let's say, so I have kids. Jack's going to have kids one of these days. You've had children. And I think, to me, it's just like, man, these kids get us angry. And it comes to the point of, how do we respond with them? Because here's where I go with this. His disciples saw Jesus with this anger. I don't think they instantly thought, well, he's angry, so I can instantly get angry, right? Do you think there's a teaching lesson behind that too? Because our kids are going to see us, and they're going to begin to reflect also where it comes. And before we get into anything deeper, it's just like, when the people we're around and they see anger, they have to see how it's dealt with, right? And so I guess what I'm asking, how does that play out in our everyday life? Because Jesus himself, I'm going to make this whip. I can't think I'm going to weave this together, singing a good song. I would say his disciples are literally watching him at this point thinking, what is he going to do with that? That's how I perceive what you're saying. Yep. So how does that live out for even us as Christians?
Well, I my opinion, which I'd be interested to hear how you guys are looking at it, but my opinion would be that there are lots of things around us that we ought to be paying attention to, and it ought to anger us.
Yeah.
Okay. But not just an anger like I'm just ticked, but an anger that requires a reaction.
Yeah.
And I can think of several things that, absolutely, sex trafficking children.
Yeah.
That just infuriates me that anybody could do that to children. Because yes, I've got a bunch of kids. The whole idea behind that, and but then the thing is do I do what I ought to do? Jesus saw it and he said, I'm going to do something about this. And sometimes we see it and it angers us, but we don't act upon it. And maybe the sin is the fact that we don't do anything when we see the injustice.
That's right. I think that's where I gravitate towards a little bit. It's just like, I think even, as guys, we're told emotions are bad. You can't have any emotions. And even to the point where it's just like, I think we've become so nullified even in society today. It's just like, man, if we're afraid to even show anger because it's going to be taken wrongly. But if Jesus showed anger and he showed it righteously and his disciples were there, he showed them a process of how to actually correctly deal with our emotions. And I think that to me is just like one of the things I want to highlight here is that it is okay to be angry if dealt correctly with. Would you say that's okay?
Yeah, there's I think that's a beautiful thing about Jesus, about being followers of him, is that there can be purpose found in things that to non-believers, there's no purpose in it. Suffering, for example, there is purpose and praise in suffering as a follower of Jesus, whereas for somebody else, it's a horrible season of life with no purpose and it's nothing but bad. Perhaps the same with anger. There can be a purpose and a controlled sense in that, but it goes back to what's being promoted and what's the purpose behind the anger. I heard a pastor once say in regards to the parenting aspect behind anger or emotion is to parent the heart, not the emotion.
That's good.
And that, it was powerful. I forget the gentleman's name. But I think we can get so caught up in the emotion or the fruit that was produced from the heart and forget to stoop down and tend to the heart, explain purpose, explain deeper things to our kids that they will come in contact with someday. So,
well, two trains of thought come to this is that you cannot control what happens to you all the time. Most of the time you can't at all, but you can control how you respond. And I think that's where the response comes from, the second thought of this, in our emotions. And not just anger, but I would say all emotions. And so that's going to reflect actually what's in our heart already. If we consider God that created us as a whole to create images like him, he's got these emotions too. And that's where I think we have to go back to these emotions actually tie to our spiritual side of who we are too. And I think that's a good way of looking at it too. Do we have it in check? Do we have guardrails there?
Yeah.
But even more so, it's coming back to, you used it, these emotions. What's the purpose behind it? These emotions help us identify where our heart might actually align with God in the spiritual realm too.
Or where it doesn't.
Where it doesn't, actually.
Yeah, so really what we're looking at is you said it at the very beginning, anger is sort of neutral. It can be a positive force or it can be a negative force. Jesus got angry, but it was a positive force. And therefore, even though he's flipping tables, he's really not sinning. Now, if I get mad and I kick a chair over, well, probably I'm sinning because I'm just mad. But we are created emotional, and in those emotions, there is a need for us to back up sometimes and go, why do I feel this? And is God putting this in there? Because I need to act upon it. And that's what I see Jesus doing. He's looking and processing and he knows, you know what? This is my Father's house. This is a disgrace. And I'm here and I can do something about it. And so for the people that were all around him going, either he's really, really mad or he's crazy, he was very much in control. And then comes out of that and then talks to his disciples and explains things and does use it as a teaching moment of you know what, this is an injustice and I took care of it.
Good. I like that. Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, so everything you do flows from it. And I think that's the guardrails that we have to put on. So let me ask this question. I don't know quite where we're going with this, but so how does somebody who does struggle with anger, how do we deal with anger? Because I know there's a lot of people out there that just like, okay, that's good information. How does I deal with anger that I can't control it right now? How do I control it? How do we help those people out?
You start counting to 10. That's what I was told. 1, 2. I found out that by the time I get to 10, I am madder than I was because I'm having to count. I I don't know that I know exactly what to say to a person who struggles with anger, except that God can help you.
So how so?
Well, if we can go there now, no one's got any problems with it. The big thing about what causes anger. Now, there's an anger where I hit my thumb with a hammer and I throw the hammer. Okay, there's that kind of whatever anger. There's this anger of this righteous indignation that we saw with Jesus, where, we see an injustice. But for so many people, anger actually stems or resonates inside of them because of a hurt. And so because there's this emotional connection to, and we'll just, we'll use like Drew and I. So if you hurt my feelings, don't you do it. If you hurt my feelings, right, then we'll say, well, my feelings are hurt. But what happens when you let hurt feelings just sort of fester? What does it produce? Anger and bitterness.
Mm-hmm. Unforgiveness. Yeah.
It begins to produce. So now,
resentment.
Yeah. Now all of a sudden, when Drew comes around me, he can probably pick up on, well, something's not right. The Bible would use it in the Old Testament about their countenance fail. Well, in other words, that means that when they were looking at each other, you could tell by the eyes and by the expressions that something's not good here anymore. And so, there's a hurt and then there's anger. Now, I don't know how to fix the hitting the thumb and throwing the hammer. I don't know how to fix that, okay? I'm just going to tell you, I hit my thumb. I still throw angers. I still throw hammers, okay? It's a reaction. And I may have to go and say to my kids or whoever saw me, I'm sorry.
Or whoever the hammer hit in the head.
Well, so far I've missed everybody. But, I may have to respond and turn around and go, you know what? I should not have lost my cool and thrown the hammer, okay? And
there's a human
slow traffic, I'm still going to be back there going, would you please get off the road? Where did you get your license? Kind of stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so don't ask me how to fix that because I'm not real sure. I love the Lord. I still struggle with that. But man, I can address that the worst anger that I know of as far as that creates sin is when there is an anger toward people because there's a hurt and it changes. It affects how you look at them. It affects the relationship. And that anger, I can say, you got to take it to the Lord and get the power, His power to help you to forgive.
There you go.
And there's a scripture about that I want to talk about, but you got a point before I pull it up?
James 1:19-21. Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore, put away all filthiness, rampart wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. If you are struggling with anger, if you're dealing with anger on a general daily basis, I think you're right. Identify where that anger comes from, but seek out the grace, seek out the resurrection power in Jesus Christ and be healed from it. And because I think it's more than just, okay, this is just an emotion. There's hurt. There's something underneath that anger that needs to be addressed. And I think that's where if you're struggling with those things, Lord, here's my heart. Take it. And let's get real with each other here, Lord. And I need help with this. And seek out that help of just with Him. And I think that's where you ask the Holy Spirit, Lord, I need self-control. I need a sound mind. I need a calm and a forgiving attitude. That doesn't come by me working at it. That comes from the Spirit of you, Lord. So that's what I need more than anything. So I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
To that.
And Jesus addressed this. You made reference to it it was sort of, the platform that we were looking at when we were talking about maybe we should, visit the subject of anger. But Jesus addressed this, and he said it in Matthew 5:21. It's part of the Sermon on the Mount. He said, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment.'" Okay, so murder is definitely a sin, right? Mm-hmm. But then he adds this twist to it, and he says, "But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment." So if murder means that you're going to face judgment, and he turns around and says, if you're angry with your brother, you're going to face judgment. He put them in the same category, so that what you said a minute ago, it's murder in the heart. And then he goes on, he says, "Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to the hell of fire." That's
intense.
None of those are good. All right. So, I mean, he's looking at anger and he's putting it in there with the same thing as like murder. And it's hard for us to process that because we think, I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't kill anybody. Yeah. But maybe you're killing something. And it could be more than just a relationship. It could be you're killing your own soul because you are so angry, you're so bitter, you're there's so much unforgiveness.
But isn't that how Satan works, though, with that confusion side of things? Isn't that it's almost like he wants us to be nullifying that, okay, well, it's a natural response. So if I feel angry, then I'm right in feeling this way.
But you said a minute ago.
That self-righteousness.
Okay, that we can't control everything that comes, right?
No.
And so every one of us are going to get an opportunity to be hurt and to respond with anger. Okay? So I have a theory, and it's basically that if the enemy really wants to tempt me or mess up my day, all he's got to do is send somebody, the right kind of somebody, who is critical or is a person that just sort of rubs me the wrong way. And boom, he's trying to take control of my day. So if that be the case, then we've got to stop and look at what Jesus says. He says, you know what? And he calls him what? He says, his brother. And meaning there's a relationship there. He's not just a stranger. He's somebody you know. He's somebody that probably you were close to.
Yeah.
Now that relationship is messed up. And then, I just picture in my mind, people over there going, oh, man, I'm telling you what, he is rotten to the core. He did me wrong in a business deal. I never dreamed he would do that to me. But he took me for, and he's sorry. And all of a sudden, where did that come from? That came from a hurt, and it's created an anger and a bitterness. And now what are you doing? It's like you're going, this fool, this, and it's progressed. And it basically, the root of it is the root of anger.
Yeah.
That's what started it all.
Anger is a seed. Anger is a source of whatever we water it with, it'll grow into. And so like anger is that, if somebody was to murder somebody, they probably weren't too happy with that person. And so they very well started with or still carried out that same feeling I have. That's a scary thought, but it's also a good opportunity to be able and overcome that moment through the Spirit and take it to the Lord. Because again, anger is a source of many things. And so what are we going to let flood into that source? Because the enemy would absolutely love to have his way with our anger because it is divisive. It stunts growth within the body mightily, and it prevents the Spirit from working within the church and within relationships. But there's that contrast side that's so beautiful, and it could be a restoration through the Spirit and a reflection of who Jesus is.
Yeah.
So with anger, let me walk this out of my mind here. It's actually a tool from God, because if it's connected to our spirit, anger is a tool from God that should be used the way God intends it to be used. We shouldn't fear it. And the devil has come alongside and used that as a means of a tool of hatred, a tool of anger, a tool of lashing out, a tool of against our brother. And Jesus is flipping the coin over and says, look, I want to take this anger that we have and I want to teach you to use it righteously, because this is how I intended it to be. And it's there to bring up this hurt, that's there to bring up this loneliness that might be inside your heart, to reflect it. Let me deal with it. So anger is actually, maybe, if I'm kind of hearing and talking this out, and maybe for the first time, anger is a valuable tool that the kingdom can use for.
Well, if we thought of it like this, if it was like one of those flashing lights, warning.
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
If we saw it like that
That's
when
good.
we begin to get angry, we begin to realize that that's a warning of something. Okay, so it could be something that I need to act upon.
Yeah.
It could be something that I need to pray about. But it does. When that warning sign starts going off, I need to stop and go. Did I just begin to have feelings toward this brother?
Yeah, that's good.
Of I just don't want to be around you and get out of here.
Well,
I
it
don't
flows
care
back to
about
the
you.
heart. Yeah.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, it, and because he goes in here and he says this, he says, so if you're offering your gift at the altar, so here you are, you're trying to live out your spiritual life. You're trying to continue being a good Christian, loving Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there you remember that your brother has something against you. There, and all of a sudden you're trying to pray. You're trying to be the Christian you're supposed to be. And God brings this up to the surface. You got anger. You got bitterness. You're unforgiving, whatever. There's a relationship crack. And what does he say? He says, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Saying something tremendously valuable. And you touched on it there. And that is, your spiritual life is now messed up.
Yeah.
And your spiritual growth is stunted because you can't go any further until you fix this relationship that has probably started because of something that made one of you angry and is now built into bitterness, unforgiveness, all that kind of junk.
When you were talking about the flashing light, I couldn't help but think of how the Bible tells us in numerous places to be slow to anger, and our flesh loves quick decisions.
That's good.
Loves quick decisions. React very quickly, react hastily, make the decision fast with what feels right, lash out, it would feel good, cuss at him, it would feel good, this, fall into temptation quick because it'll feel good. The Bible says, and the Spirit breathes through us, be slow to anger, be slow to anger. You've been given a spirit of self-control. Be slow and steady and still within that. That just popped in my head whenever you were talking about the flashing light. So,
but I think that all comes back to, I think where we'll probably go with a lot of these podcasts, it goes back to abiding.
yeah,
And I don't think that's even possible until we really try to abide in who God is, abide in his word, abide in the vine, be connected to the vine. That's abide in the Spirit. I mean, that's through a multitude of things. Go ahead.
But with that, just think, how hard is it going to be to abide if I'm angry?
Yeah.
I mean, so we can look at it and say, well, if I'm abiding in the Lord, I won't get angry. Okay. But we're talking about anger. Maybe somebody's listening and they're going, I'm angry. I've been hurt. Mm-hmm. And they feel like, it was, they have a right to be angry because they were hurt really bad. And it was an injustice done to them. And so they have this mentality, okay, that, I have a right to be mad. But the bottom line is if you're a Christian, this is going to mess up your abiding in the Lord, because you can't really have that good time at the altar that it talks about there in Matthew, that time with the Lord, because you've got this and you've got to handle it. And so, yeah, abiding is going to be a good subject for many of our times of talks. But boy, I'll tell you what, it sure is hard. Well, let me go here. You ready? When is anger definitely a sin? When is it definitely a sin? What's your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. To me, it would have to be when it results with the flesh. I think it starts with the flesh of a mindset where I really start going down that pathway.
Okay.
To where it becomes, because I think self-righteousness flows from anger as well. And I think that's where infliction against anybody else, I'm taking away a thought from somebody else. It could be an encouragement to them or a word, and I bring it back to myself. I think that's where, it becomes breathing into the action part.
Okay.
When it defiles the character of God,
That's good.
and you could just combat that and say, yeah, but Jesus was angry. His character, he wasn't prideful. No. He wasn't self-righteous. He wasn't selfish. And yes, he was angry, but he was not going against the character of God. He was not sinning in that moment. So
yes, because you need to balance him coming into the temple and driving them all out with him hanging on the cross and looking down and saying, forgive them. Okay. So yeah, he was reflecting the character of God, and the character of God, according to what we see in the Old Testament, is God gets angry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Deuteronomy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Several
but then
times.
God forgives. So I'm not going to deny the fact that what Jesus is teaching here is something that is very real to me. And that is, I got angry. I was upset with somebody. And then the Lord, what does he do? He says, okay, but you can't go any further.
Yeah.
So until you fix this, And so let's go back to square one, which is go find that brother.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter right or wrong. It just matters that you can't let that anger affect that relationship. And so the first thing I put down here on when is it definitely a sin, my thought was this: when it's against a person and it affects how you treat them or feel toward them.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. I'm not going to say that's it. So other ideas?
It's a deep thought that I have not thought.
Yeah, it is.
According to the passage we read in Matthew, if you start speaking negative about a person,
you fool.
Yeah,
it makes reference to.
Instead of encouraging them, that's where I was going with that.
You've now stepped into the sin aspect of it. And but here's my biggest concern from all of this is I just don't think anger walks by itself. When it's sin, when anger steps into the sin category, it brings all of its friends in there. And we've been discussing those things, It brings that bitterness. It brings that unforgiveness. It brings that pride, I didn't deserve this, whatever. It brings all these other things in there. And so you can pretty much know that light is going off when all of a sudden you feel justified to shun that person, when you feel justified to say something negative about them. Yeah, because when anger steps over into the sin camp, it brings all its buddies, and it brings all of the negative actions, which goes back to what, I believe the scripture was telling us is in your sin, don't let it control you. Don't let it control your actions, your words, your thoughts.
So an easy way to identify righteous anger and unrighteous anger. Unrighteous anger will bring and hold. It adds weight to it, where righteous anger sets free. And I think that to me is kind of identifying those two. My righteous anger that comes from the Lord, that is freeing to letting the Spirit work, to where unrighteous, I'm going to bog down the Spirit. I think that's a good understanding.
Okay. This whole idea of that a lot of anger stems from hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've all been around people that have been hurt, and we've tried to counsel or encourage or whatever. And I don't know about you, but, so many times when somebody's hurt, there is this, I have a right to feel this way mentality,
Very justified.
Yeah, they're upset, and they're justifying why they're upset, or the anger and the stuff that's coming from that. But we have to stop and remember this. Nobody could ever have been hurt more than Jesus Christ. I mean, rejected, absolute rejection, okay? Lied about. And I've had people say, well, that's just a lie. They just started saying this stuff about me. Everything that we could ever be hurt over, Jesus knows. And yet his response, even to those that were doing the gravest act against him, which was killing him, is forgiveness. And the power of forgiveness cancels out anger. Because if I can forgive you, I can be released from any of the anger that I was harboring in my heart over the broken relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
That's transforming.
That's really good.
Last thing I want to communicate is when you're angry, and then all the friends that come along with it, what you don't realize is you're doing more damage to yourself than you are to them. You think I'm angry with them. I'm not going to talk to them. I'm not going to go around them. All that kind of stuff. I'll show them. I won't even answer their phone calls.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is you're not doing anything really to them. You're just imprisoning yourself. And the crazy thing is you are imprisoning yourself. You're pulling the door shut yourself. I'm just going to be mad. That's what I'm going to be. And I'm not going to forgive, and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to stay hurt. And I just close it. And now I'm like, ha, ha, ha. And they're out running around doing whatever. And I'm sitting in my prison cell.
Yeah.
Because I put myself there. And the key is sitting right there in the lock.
Mm-hmm.
All I got to do is reach out there and say, you know what, Lord, I'm going to forgive them.
Mm-hmm.
And then just turn that lock and open that door and walk right out and be more free than I ever imagined because I released it.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how many people right this moment, maybe they're even listening to what we're doing here. And they don't realize they have put themselves in the prison cell. And you can think you're justified, but the truth of the matter is I'd rather be free than justify my actions.
Yeah, because whenever you're living in that cell with the visual that you gave, you might not feel like you're affecting anything, but there absolutely are effects of just kind of hoarding that anger or not doing anything about it. It changes how you interact with other people. I know if I've been upset, go back at the golf course or something, and I don't take time to address it, when anger goes unaddressed in Jesus, then it just continues, as you mentioned earlier, I think, Pastor Drew. So I'll go home and maybe not react kindly to my wife if she asked me to do something. I never took that moment to address the anger. And so it absolutely has ripple effects. While it might not feel like it, I'm in my cell, I'm away from the world, and definitely that person, it absolutely affects other areas. We're not called to function in that manner.
Is there ever a time?
No.
Okay. Where we would consider anger to be justified. I know we're talking about righteous anger, and we talked about, the exploitation of children into sex slavery and how awful that is, and we're angry about that. But is there a time where it comes back where we're talking like, man, this person really wronged us, that's justified to use that somehow?
I'm going to stick with my answer. No.
Yeah, no. I mean, I agree with you. If I'm a viewer and I'm listening to this, I'm still going to try to justify.
That's smart.
No, but this one's okay. No, that's what we're saying here. That's what I want to clarify.
I don't know. In light of how Christ forgave the absolute worst.
Yeah.
I don't know how we could say, with Jesus in my heart, I can forgive. It just doesn't matter how bad it is.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. I can with Christ in my heart. Now, if you don't have Christ in your heart, you're probably going to be paying lots of money to a psychologist or something like that for counseling, because it's just ruining you on the inside. But with Christ, you can forgive and go on and be released.
No area was left untouched by Jesus.
Yeah.
I want to add this really quick too. If we're not careful, we can pick that anger back up. We can move ourselves, even after we left the jail cell of freedom, we can move back in the jail cell of anger. We can move back in there if we're not careful, if we go back down. So forgiveness with anger might mean I got to forgive Pastor. I got to forgive Pastor Junior Jack here of just something they did today. But I might pick it back up 3 days later. I have to forgive again. So it's a continual process of forgiveness. And I think that's the thing. Forgiveness at times, if we're not careful, I've done it, I've forgiven. We're going to pick it back up if we're not careful. Forgiveness is the process, the continuance of it.
Growth.
So if the anger keeps coming back, forgiveness needs to keep happening.
Exactly.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right. Well, listen, I think we've had a good conversation today about anger, and maybe it was helpful to somebody. It makes me feel better anyway. But I will say this. We appreciate very much the opportunity to broadcast, to have subject matters like this. That's real world stuff. We call it faith and culture because this is the stuff that Christians are really struggling with, and it's a part of everyday life. And I've just met so many Christians in the years of ministry that I've been involved in that have a hurt, have an anger. And so this is real stuff, And so we hope that maybe we shined a little light on the subject. Maybe it was helpful. We appreciate you tuning in. We hope that you will be with us again. It's Faith and Culture. Hit the like button. Do whatever you can to help us get the word out there. But I've got to close with something because we had a conversation before we started, and it was in comparison to Indiana Jones, right? And we all had who we were. And I was Sean Connery, the good-looking one, and because of the gray hair.
So let's back this up. Jack asked why I call him Junior all the time.
Because I'm Jack the Third.
Yes, and so, but your name has a title of Junior attached to it somewhere, right? Is that how that is?
No.
It doesn't ever? Well, there's my mistake.
You just call him Junior.
I just call him Junior because I know your dad is senior, so you're Junior instantly. So
no, his dad is Junior.
His dad's
He's
Junior?
Third.
Well, anyways, I've called you Junior because of Indiana Jones. Just the whole mindset with that, which led us to a conversation of Indy's
Who are
dad.
you? That's
Indy's
what we were
dad
trying to figure out.
Always calls Indy Junior, so
Right.
I called him Junior.
So I'm going to call you Junior.
So you'd
Okay.
be Sean Connery as Indiana's dad.
But you were who?
I would be, I think his name's like Sully or Sully or whatever it is. And he's the one that has the pet monkey. He's a bigger dude.
Yeah.
And he's Indy's best friend. And then there's...
He's also the guy that disappears every time Indy gets in trouble.
Yeah, that's him. That's
Yeah,
him.
that's true.
Right. We know how to stay out of the light. So, and then we have Noah behind the scenes, and he would be the guy that he says, like in the tank, he's like, the pin's mightier than the sword, and he shoots it. He's a really like smart professor guy, and he shoots ink on this German soldier, and he drives the tank into the wall, whatever it is. So he destroys the tank with a pin, and so that would be Noah, which you don't see Noah usually in here, but he's the one running all the stuff behind it. So
if you didn't get anything out of the program,
Oh my.
go watch Indiana Jones
That's not what we're promoting.
and get the story straight on who our parts are, okay? But until then, thanks for joining us. God bless.